What if you didn't have to choose between grieving what you've lost and being grateful for what remains? What if wholeness comes from holding both truths at the same time? Hello and welcome to the new Ashla Podcast. My name is Justin Gates. I'm your host, and my co-host joining me today, as always, Michael Perry.
Hey, fam.
Welcome to the show today. Today we're going to be talking about grief and gratitude and how we can hold both in power. Kind of related to this time of year, Michael, where these things and these feelings really come to surface for a lot of people because, you know, there are some empty chairs at some tables and maybe someone isn't there to get a gift or give a gift, right?
Yeah.
And this and just like any other holiday season, it always seems to come wrapped in expectations, doesn't it?
Right? I know, having to put on that mask around the family, seem like everything's good, but
Well,
often
and
there are people we miss.
There are. And we're often told that it should be a time of joy. Should be. You should be joyful. You should be joyous. You should be celebrating and warm and welcoming. But the fact is, for many, this season brings a different kind of reality. It just does. And we really have to talk about it and call it out. And again, it could be that empty chair at the table. It could be a relationship that went south and broke off. It could be a version of yourself that you're still grieving, that you miss, right? Or, you know, that loneliness or isolation that feels sharper than the cold outside. And it's cold today. So this tends to be the season where emotions don't move in straight lines. Maybe they don't ever. I don't know. They don't for me, but you can feel grateful and heartbroken. It's true, right? We could be heartbroken and grateful.
100%. I mean, I think often heartbreak is a sign of how much love or capacity you had.
As
And
we talked about,
gratitude's usually a part of that.
as we talked about in a few shows back, we can be connected and alone at the same time too. We can be hopeful and exhausted. We could be lots of things. We could be lots of things that seem counterintuitive to each other, but the world teaches us to pick one emotion and to perform it convincingly, doesn't it? Especially around the family.
Yeah.
Especially these times. But does our souls work that way? Do they?
No. They always speak truth. I had someone I cared about, and Christmas was always the hardest time of the year for her because that's when she lost her mother. And it just like, you would see the change within her soul around this time of year.
Well, there's something else we need to point out here, that gratitude is often sold as a cure-all, right? This cure-all spiritual bandage, or, you know, to cover the ache. Hey, just be grateful. Be grateful. You're still here. At least you're still here. Stuff like that. Or, you know, whatever the thing may be that they say, to kind of slap a Band-Aid on that deep, deep hurt. And as we talked about in the show we did about grief, probably a few months ago now, grief isn't just about loss. It isn't just about death, I should say. It can be about lots and lots of different kinds of loss, right?
Well, and it's just, man, it's always that time of year, especially getting close to the end of the year, where you really start reflecting on life. You know, you start having the family come around, you see where people are at, and it's emotional.
Yeah. But you know, true gratitude becomes deeper when it grows alongside grief, or when it heals alongside grief, and they start to share the same inner space, right? And not
Yep.
instead of, you know, I mean, gratitude always, I shouldn't say always. I got to break that habit of, because there's no such thing as always and never, right? But
Yep.
a lot of people tend to try to replace grief with gratitude, and it's momentary, or it's just to put on a face maybe, or to, because we're really trying to make them feel better. And we're like, you know, hey, you know, I'm happy you're here, or I'm grateful for this, or you should be grateful for that. You should be happy. You should be joyous. It's been a couple of years, man. Get it over it. You should be grateful. Look at your life now, right? What if I said that to you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, what if I said that to you? Like, look at your beautiful life now. You have all this stuff going for you. Why are you still messing with this grief? You should be grateful, Michael. You should be happy and joyous.
Well, right, there's a hint of toxic positivity to this because I used to have that mentality.
Yeah.
I remember it's like remember someone always has it worse than you, and
Yeah.
it's like that's not a good way to go through life. That is suppression at its finest.
Right. Right. You're not broken. You're not failing. You're grieving. You're human. And here's kind of a secret that I'll let you in on. Your heart is big enough to hold these two things at the same time. Do you believe that? Your heart can hold truth.
It's crazy, but it's
as
necessary.
big as gratitude and grief. It is. It is. And, when gratitude is forced, and, a lot of people say when it's forced too early, I'll say when gratitude is ever forced. Again, people are trying to use it as a way for themselves to silence grief or for others to kind of suppress it in somebody because you're putting out these vibes, bro. You're putting out these downers. And again, it's used as this Band-Aid or this spiritual cure-all for everything, for poverty, for, it's not just grief, but for lack of abundance, for lots and lots and lots of things. I don't know if I'd ever say that gratitude can be toxic in any way, but it definitely, when it's forced and when it's pushed upon, it doesn't feel like it's true.
Well, I think especially pertaining to grief, when gratitude's used to compensate grief, that's where it starts crossing the threshold, because gratitude's important when you're going through grief, because that's what, again, I love it. I heard it at a quote years ago, and it's that heartbreak shows your capacity for love. And when you are grieving, whether it's a relationship, the loss of somebody, that is your capacity for love. That was the love you had for them, yourself, the situation. And it's important to honor that with the gratitude for that.
Yeah. So let's quickly talk about grief. Let's talk about how we can understand it. And that way we can kind of set the tone for what's to come later when we add these gratitude in the mix. So grief is, like many of our emotions, our emotional states, is misunderstood because it's not something that we get a good lesson on, right? Nobody teaches us how to grieve. And not that there's a right way or a wrong way to grieve. There are extremes. If you're hurting yourself, I would not consider that to be a good, natural way to grieve because I don't want to see somebody get hurt, right? And we talked about this on the grief show, that there are extremes here, but, you're going to find yourself floating on this scale somewhere in the middle for the most of us, right? When something happens, and you're right, it is a very emotional experience. That's where it hits us the hardest. At least for me, it always did. So, but grief doesn't follow rules. It doesn't follow the calendar like the holiday season. It just tends to show up because we're reminded of it. It shows up when it wants, how it wants, and it comes and goes as deep or as shallow as it needs to, right?
Yeah.
And
well, and again, everyone grieves different.
They do. How do we help, just quickly, because this is kind of a recap of the grief show we did, that was a show that you were running. When we have someone in grief, what are kind of the things that we see in them?
We see, I love the term dabda, and it showcases what grief is, the different states of grief. Now, everyone moves through it differently, but it's a really good identifier. So you have denial, which can be short or long. You have anger, you have bartering, depression, and then acceptance. And you can bounce in between these. It's not a linear path. It's different for everyone, but these are usually the emotions we see. What could I have done differently when you're bartering away? How could I have saved them? In the anger stage, it's like, I'm so upset at the world for this happening to someone I cared about or to myself.
And as I said, it's not limited to death, is it? It's
no.
Again, it could be the loss of the death of a relationship or loss of a relationship. It could be the loss of a dream or the death of a dream that you worked so hard for that just didn't materialize, didn't come to life, right?
Yeah.
People grieve their health, don't they?
Yeah.
And this goes back to the relationship thing, but I found it very, very strange to, in a lot of ways, have just as much grief for someone who was still alive, but not present in my life anymore.
I think another big one is the grieving of the illusion of a relationship. Often, again, we have a relationship with who someone is and who they are in our minds. And often when that illusion cracks and we see someone for who they are, we grieve the potential, we grieve that identity of this living person.
Right. So again, grief can show up quietly, and it can. You feel this heaviness in your chest, sudden wave of memories and nostalgia, both good and bad, right? Shows up in our body as fatigue, or in our mind as fog, or in our heart as pain. And then other times it crashes like a storm. Are both of these normal?
Yeah. I mean, one of the things I learned when I was going through grief, when I lost my significant other, it was waves of just, the start of it was just this constant whirlwind of emotions. And then as things got better, it'd just be little moments, break in the armor, and it would just come crashing down. And then there'd be good moments, and it was sort of just these waves that started off super strong and all the time, and it slowly slowed down and eventually became manageable. And yeah,
I've heard grief explained as love with nowhere to go.
I think that's a good analogy for it.
I think so too. Feels like it. Love that's lost its direction or focus, but love with nowhere to go, that's a good one too. So I kind of want to talk about these layers of grief that I didn't come up with these, obviously, but in our notes today, there were some things I wanted to touch upon, these layers of grief. And when we talk about layers, we're generally talking about, mental, physical, spiritual, emotional, but I've added a few more. I added a behavioral layer and an energetic layer to this, because I think as whole beings, grief doesn't just touch us upon our mind or heart, even though that's where we feel it the most, but it touches every part of us, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
And it's not
every bit of us.
It's not a single emotion. It's not a single feeling. Think of it like it's coming into this internal ecosystem that we have going on, with everything connected, right? With layers that move through us, and they move through us differently. They connect in different ways. And as you said, it's going to hit people differently. But if we can understand these layers a little better, maybe we can stop fighting grief and start listening to it. Maybe we can start to see how maybe it's working within us and what it's trying to help us accomplish and help us do. So the first one is the emotional layer.
Well, in the emotional layer, there's so much depth. And again, that going from the ranges of depression, anger, it hits every part of us.
Yeah. Sadness and longing and confusion and guilt, numbness, which we talked about in the last few shows. It doesn't move linearly either, right? It doesn't move the same way. It doesn't move perfectly. It comes in waves, as you said. It's like an ocean of feelings, and it just crashes and crashes and crashes. Because let me ask you this: you can feel functional, right? You can one or 2 days or 3 days or a week even feel very functional. Everything's stepping along, and then just one day you hear a song, or you see something on TV, a show that you used to watch.
It just brings it all back like day one.
Yeah. And you really can feel like you're drowning emotionally, because you really do feel like you're going back to day one. Like, oh man, I got to start over again. You didn't have to start. Eventually you got to a point where you were not starting over again. It was just building, right? It was building upon each other, the healing.
Which, I mean, one of the most important parts of healing from grief, it maybe looks different for everyone, but it's about processing it. And I know for me, when I went through the waves, it'd be like when I have those moments where I would just break down crying. It's like I would embrace those moments, because I'd have a little bit of an emotional hangover the next couple days, but I would feel so much better afterwards.
The physical layer, because as we always say, the body always remembers, right? Does grief live in the body long before we understand what's happening?
I mean, in some situations, I'd say more often than not, grief happens when we do have that realization of loss. Though sometimes we can grieve relationships before they're over. I think one of the worst situations we see in dating nowadays is where someone realizes they don't want to be in the relationship anymore, but they stay in it, and we can energetically feel that within a relationship. And when we feel that person pulling away, it becomes grief without a loss yet.
Right. So you're kind of anticipating it. You're striking up the anxiety band in the future.
Yep.
Yeah. What kind of things physically do we suffer when we're grieving?
Well, aside from crying, which I don't think is necessarily an affliction, but
Right.
we can feel a pain in our chests. We can feel it in our gut. Fatigue, my God, fatigue is a big one.
Mm-hmm. That goes bone deep, doesn't it?
Yep.
Headaches and shortness of breath sometimes. Feeling like your arms and legs weigh like a ton.
Yep.
And this is all nervous system response, isn't it? It's just
Yep.
freaking out, and it's in fight or flight or fawn. And I think this is why so many people feel physically overwhelmed during times of mourning or these really deep emotional changes. Their body is really processing something that, well, emotionally and physically, we start processing things while we're still trying to make sense of it, right?
Yep. Well, and again, it's like when we go through something traumatic, and loss is always traumatic, whether that's capital T or little t. It is an emotional charge in our bodies that we're just not capable of releasing all that at once.
Mm-hmm.
And so the nervous system slowly tries to get it out of your system. And it doesn't necessarily mean it will just be away forever. I think one trap people fall into is letting grief become an identity after a prolonged period. But grief is something that can follow you. And a lot of these things we were talking about, like a show comes on, a song comes on.
Yeah. So the mental layer, and this kind of relates to the stories we tell ourselves, something that you're fond of reminding us of a lot on this show. And our mind tries to organize this chaos because it really is chaotic, isn't it? When we start thinking to ourselves, why didn't I say more? Or what if I had done something differently? Or did that actually happen? Was I dreaming? Is this real?
Yeah.
One I hear a lot is, will I ever feel normal again?
Well, I think this is one of the traps with that over-identification. I mean, again, when we grieve, it is so real. But we can often get caught in a story where the grief becomes such a part of our identity. And I mean, when it comes to healing, it's when life goes from life is happening to us that life is happening for us. And it's being able to move that transition to where we are living our grief to we are remembering our grief.
Right. And I don't know if people who are experiencing deep grief really realize at times how they're behaving, but I think it affects our behavior too, right? Especially in the realm of isolating and withdrawing, overworking, just keep busy to stay distracted, or this is something that you brought up before, and I think we were talking about during the grief show, but it was avoiding certain places or people.
Yeah.
Like do you remember do you know what I'm talking about? Like you were talking about how you would avoid certain places to eat or certain things, or
yeah, no, I would stay clear of a lot of the places that would definitely trigger my grief, places that we frequented or things like that. That was definitely something that took me a while to come around on.
And just again, as a friendly reminder, these aren't bad things. These aren't wrong. They're very natural things. You're adapting. You're adapting to this sudden chaos. And because a lot of times this is sudden, and this is where grief gets hard, is when it's sudden and when it's unexpected. I've lost people in my life, but it wasn't really super unexpected, right? I had time to get ready, and except for my dog Lacey, that one hit me because that one I just came home and she was gone. But these things aren't bad. These things aren't wrong. Again, they're adaptations. We're trying to, your mind and body are trying to create some sort of stability. You're trying to rebuild, right, that stable ground so that you can try to move on.
Well, and I think another big thing, just why we're talking about behaviors, I will never forget when I started seeing a grief counselor. And the first thing he told me was, in this first year of grief, do not make any major life decisions. Don't get any relationships. Don't buy a house. Don't change jobs. Like, this is not a time for you to have rational thinking online. And he was so right. I listened to most areas, but the areas I didn't, man, I tell you what, I had to learn some more lessons quick.
Yeah. Well, walk us through why that is.
Well, I mean, when we have such a surge of emotions going on such an inconsistent basis, I mean, again, the nervous system is processing this, and this takes time, this takes work, it's something that, I mean, your fundamental reality has now shifted. Something is now missing from your reality that was a grounding point. And when our emotions are flaring up, our logical mind can't talk. Our emotions will always be louder than our logical mind. And so our emotions will take us on that ride, that buying that house or jumping into a relationship to feel whole again, or trying to move across the country to start anew. It's like we can end up doing a lot of irrational things that can have long-term consequences.
Yeah. Yeah. Like moving to Kathmandu or something.
Yeah.
You're a long ways from home. Yeah. No, I mean, it's great advice. It's just not something you hear a lot, right? But I think it's because most people in life aren't good grief counselors, because as much chaos as this person is going through, we are now inheriting that chaos from them. And it's like, oh my God, what do you even say to somebody who lost somebody, right? That's always the
Yeah.
question. Like, that's always, oh my God, I don't know what to say. I mean, I always say, listen, I'm so very sorry for your loss, right?
And
Because
realistically, that's all you can do.
I don't know what
Yeah.
else to say. You know what I mean? Because
You
I
got to sit in the
can't.
mud with them.
That's right. More often than not, what I say more often than not is, what do you need? What can I do for you right now? And I'm not pushy about it either, because they're overwhelmed. They don't know what they want. They don't know what they need right now.
Yeah.
Especially if you're in the first hours and days and weeks. Sometimes they don't know what they want. Just make sure they're eating. Make sure check on them. Make sure they're alive. What else can you do? What else can you do?
And what I
What I
think another
found.
big thing here is not to try to force opinions down their throat of what you think is good for them. I think
Yeah.
when someone is grieving, again, it looks different for everyone. And as much as you might be able to give them some good advice, keep it to a minimum.
Yeah. 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 Just be present and available, right? Just be ready. When I find out when people close to me, they lose somebody or lose something, and even a breakup or whatever, if I see that it's affecting them negatively, or maybe not negatively, but if it's really affecting them a lot and they're starting to kind of get chaotic, I just say, hey, I'm over here. I'm sorry this is happening to you, but what can I do to help? And if they say, I'm good, or I mean, there's a million different reactions that they'll have. My favorite reaction that I got from somebody one time was, why are you sorry?
Yeah.
Because I don't like seeing you go through this. If I had it my way, you would never go through this, because I love you. That's why I'm sorry. But, you know, you just got to sit with them, right? You just got to, and yeah. I'm a good silent sitter. I will sit with someone in silence for hours and hours and months and millennia, because I want them to let me know when it's time for them to need me in a different way, right? I
Yeah.
always make myself available, but I'm not going to force anything on them, because I don't know what they're going through. I mean, I know what grief is, and I know I've lost things and I've lost people, but I don't know what they're going through, right? What they're going through in that moment. I kind of have a vague idea. I know it probably hurts in here and it's probably spinning up here and everything feels like it weighs a ton. I know that stuff because that's what happened to me and that's what happens to lots of people. But do I know what they're really going through? I need them to tell me. I need them to tell me what they need. As long as they're not hurting themselves, as long as they're not, then we just have to sit with the process and let it. Why does the pressure to be grateful backfire so horribly when people are grieving?
So, again, gratitude is important, but it needs to come in its own way, in its own time. When we try to suppress grief with gratitude, when we try to push grief on people who are grieving, gratitude on people who are grieving, it it doesn't address the real issue of what's going on with them. I
Yeah.
mean, again, it's important to have gratitude, to remember what was good, what you learned, how this person influenced you, or how life was during that time. But it's important to also acknowledge what you're going through. A lot of people just they want to be happy and be over it. And Man, I tell you what, I spent most of my adult life when it came to relationships that ended and phases of my life that were over, and how I would do all I could to not look at it. Do all I could to keep my head, be looking ahead instead of looking in the back. But that accumulates that emotional debt.
Yes, it does. There is this quiet pressure, and it's not just during the holidays, although this is the season we're in, and we're usually around more family at this time of year, if you do gatherings, right? But there's always this quiet pressure from family or friends or coworkers or just the culture that you're from. Could be a lot of pressure there too, and a lot from ourselves to just be grateful, to just smile through it, to just rise above this pain, right?
You know,
To keep the mood light, to keep the vibe so that no one else feels uncomfortable. Why would I want
yeah.
anybody else to feel uncomfortable, right? I don't want to share this I want to share good things, but I don't want to share this ick, this hurt, this pain.
Well, it's like I had some really well-intentioned friends when I was going through my grief and going through healing where it's like, okay, I'm learning how to feel these emotions. And I
Hmm.
had so many people in my life that were trying to, come on, man, let's get you out of the house. Let's do these things. Come on, let's hang out. And I get it. They wanted to help me feel better, and especially because it made them feel uncomfortable as well.
Right.
Having to see me in that light, especially when I was Mr. Positive most of my life.
Exactly.
And that was a difficult thing for them to, when I tried to explain, like, no, I'm maybe not in a good place right now, but I'm in the right place right now, and I need you to respect that about me right now. Like, I appreciate what you're doing, thank you, and let's plan something, let's do something here in a week or two, but right now, let me sit in my grief, let me feel what I need to feel right now.
Yeah. Now, sometimes people will weaponize gratitude, and I don't think they do it on purpose, right? They just have bad delivery. Well,
Yeah.
and they're not very impeccable with their words, because they'll say things like, "Well, at least you still have blank," or
Yeah.
"It could be worse.
Yep. Look on the bright side.
Look on the bright side." Others have it way harder than you. This turns gratitude into more of a mask, and you forces people to wear it and perform, right? It could be shit. This pressure that you get from people could be almost worse than some of the highs and lows of the grief. Really can be, because
You know, an important thing
gratitude.
to touch.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just an important thing to touch on here is when we're talking about grief, when you go through the healing process, it is a very grief striking process. You start to grieve all the versions of you didn't stand up for. You start to grieve all these things that you didn't do with your life. You start to see things as they are, your childhood, whatever. And again, this isn't about blame, but when we go through emotional shifts, when we are healing and we're starting to become someone new, people do not like that, especially if you've had the same group of friends you've dealt with most of your life. Like, there's the term of the crabs in the bucket, and they
Mm,
one crab tries to get out of the bucket, the other try to bring them back to their level, and it's about asserting those boundaries and stuff. But it's just important for anyone who's practicing healing, which I imagine if you're listening to our podcast, you are, that just because what you're doing seems abnormal to those who have seen you your whole life doesn't mean you're doing it wrong.
right. Right. Gratitude starts to become an obligation instead of a natural part of this process. And what that causes people to do is start to feel shame because of it, because they don't really feel grateful right now, right? They'll say things like, "Why can't I just get over it? Why am I still sad? They lost grandma too. Why do they seem fine and I don't?" Right? What's wrong with me? The worst question ever. What's wrong with me?
One of the hardest things I had to learn with grief, like, I'm still going through waves of grief for different things that I've gone through these last couple years. And when those waves hit, I have finally just gotten to the point where it's like, I accept that I just got to ride these waves, that I can't control or tell it when it's over.
Hmm?
I accept that this is just a part of my life for now. And when they come up, I'm going to allow it to be there. I'm not going to judge it. I'm not going to over identify with it, but I will allow it to exist in my life and accept that it will heal in its own time. There's this phrase that I came up with a while back when I started going through healing that I realized it's like sutures. And with the waves, you start with the big stitches, but as you get closer to the end of the wound, they're much smaller in diameter and less strong.
No. Well, and gratitude can really backfire for us in these situations because instead of lifting our hearts and lifting us in a healthy way, it just cuts deeper sometimes. It makes the wound deeper. And worst of all, it teaches people to distrust their truth and to hide what's really going on. Real gratitude does not demand that we be quiet and that we silence our grief. Gratitude can hold the hand of grief, and it can says, and we can say, both of you are welcome here. I need you both. I need both gratitude and grief at this moment. Because gratitude isn't the absence of pain. It's the awareness of what is alongside the pain. Because pain isn't the only thing that exists, but that's the only thing we're focusing on right now, right? And gratitude doesn't deny the grief. It helps ground it in reality, in truth, in what's happening. Because yes, no matter what happens in the world, there's always good happening too. For everything that hurts, there's things that uplift and bring joy, right? So, but we're just not focusing on that. And when you force gratitude in this way, when you're shoving it down your own throat or down someone else's, pushing it upon you, it doesn't help. It doesn't help. And guess what? You cannot fake gratitude into existence. You can't fake it till you make it. So the whole point of this show was to kind of talk about how grief and gratitude can coexist. They are not opposing forces. They're not canceling forces. They don't fight each other. So how can grief and gratitude coexist?
It's about giving them the space when the time comes for them. It's integration, right? When we're going through those heavy grief periods, we can focus on some gratitude and realize what we are missing. But there are periods too where we can really remember the good of that relationship, or the good that was ourselves during that time, the purity. They don't have to exist without each other, but I think the danger falls into having one without the other. When we just stay in the grief of loss and we don't allow ourselves to see the good that this had brought about in our lives, then we'll be consumed by it. Just like in turn, if we're too focused on the gratitude and we don't allow the grief to come through, it'll follow us through our days.
Yeah, because we trick ourselves into thinking that if we feel gratitude, that we're somehow betraying the memory or the grief. Or if they, on the other side of that, if we feel grief and we're ignoring what is, then we're failing to be grateful. Which, let me be honest with you, Michael, you don't have to be grateful for anything in any given moment. If it's not time to be grateful, then don't be grateful. Sit with that grief if you need to. As you said, there is a time, right? They both, don't get me wrong, they both can sit in that same space and they will not fight for space. They will assume there's plenty of room, right? And if you find a way to balance these two, they actually expand that space if you think about it.
You know, I heard this phrase back when I was going through the grieving process, and it's like grief is something that exists within us, and the point of healing grief isn't to shrink the grief, it's to expand around the grief.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, these things may occupy and come from different parts of this emotional landscape we're talking about, but both are valid, natural, authentic expressions of the heart. The heart cherishes both. Grief honors that depth of connection, as you said earlier. Gratitude can help honor, or does honor, that continuation of that deep love. They're not canceling forces. They almost complete each other in a way.
Yin and yang, right?
Yes. Yeah. Light and shadow. Grief will say, I miss what was. Gratitude says, I cherish what was and what still is. Both of these are true. Both of these belong.
And they can coexist.
They do. And honestly, they probably do without our attention. You know, they're not fighting for dominance. We are trying to figure out how to balance these things. But they create, really at the end of the day, when they are balanced and when they are whole, they create this emotional honesty where our heart doesn't have to choose sides, and where we don't have to choose sides anymore, where we do what you said, we integrate.
Yeah. Well, it's like, man, I tell you what, the first step into my healing journey was before I even knew what healing was. I saw how grief consumed the person I lost. and how the holidays would come around and it would just, all the progress made that year would completely be thrown to the wayside and it would start over at the beginning of the year. And so when she passed, I had to promise myself, it's like, I'm not going to run from grief. I am going to allow myself to feel it, so it's not something I'm running from my whole life like she did. And I was very thankful that I had that example, and that was my first step into healing without ever knowing what it was.
Yeah. Grief is not perfect, nor will you ever master grief. Gratitude is not perfect. You'll never master gratitude. Presence over perfection every time. But we must allow grief to speak. We must allow ourselves to sit with it so that we understand it. It helps, and when we do this, it helps gratitude become deeper and fuller and more sincere. If we're not performing the act of gratitude, or we're doing this, wearing this, yes, I'm happy, I'm fine, everything's fine, and just wearing this face, this smile to make other people feel better, make ourselves feel better. When we stop doing that, when we just honestly let it speak to us, it stops being that performance and it becomes presence over perfection. Because life will always still contain meaning. Life is always still precious. Yes, I miss them, but I'm so grateful they were in my life. Right? Both things are true. It carries, and thinking about it like that carries both the wound and the blessing. It carries both the grief and the gratitude. It acknowledges the pain, but also the warmth that is still there, the loss and the love.
Well, I think it's so important to embrace both. Again, how I said my grief came in waves. I did utilize those moments of peace to find the gratitude in it. And one of the most beautiful things that happens with grief, again, it goes from life happened to us to life happens for us. And it was being able to transition my grief from any time I had a memory or something come up and it was heartbreaking and the grief would well up. And I remember the day that transition happened, where now it's just a fond memory, something I'm thankful for existing in my life.
Yeah, that's a whole different place you get to. It's a whole different place. We talk about gratitude throughout the series of this podcast, where we do genuinely, honestly believe that I'm happy for everything that happened to me in my life. I am happy. I am grateful for everything that's happened to me in my life, because it brought me to this very moment. And I'm pretty happy with who I am and what I've become. But that's a whole different it's a whole different perspective, isn't it? And it's not one that we can always hold all the time, because we're not perfect, but we try to be present. Sometimes a song will come on the radio for me and I'll go, man, I did not want to deal with this today. Right?
Yeah, right.
And no matter how long it's been. So yeah, it's a lifelong practice. It's a lifelong journey to discovery too. Because when we talk about practicing this kind of more genuine gratitude, it's not about demanding either in ourselves or others demanding of us to be grateful. It's a continuous rediscovery, because it will come up naturally when you slow down enough and you sit and you listen and you start to notice what still supports you, what nourishes you, what brings meaning, right? Instead of reaching for some grand expression of gratitude, I shouldn't say we should, but we generally can find these things in the more smaller, less grandiose, but steady things, right? A warm meal, a safe place to rest our head. That friend that checks in, he may be kind of annoying you while you're grieving, but he really does care and love about you. He does care about you. He does love you. He just hasn't perfected the art of speech. He's not, right. He still loves you, and you can find those little moments of gratitude in there. You're like, you know what? This guy is annoying the ever loving, out of me, but man, he loves me. He must really love me, because here he is going out of his way and diving, rolling his sleeves up and jumping in. He's not hurting me, but it is kind of hard to deal with this right now, right? Type of thing, But again, these things and many more, we're not saying that you need to feel grateful for. You need to feel what you're feeling in the moment. You need to acknowledge what you're feeling in the moment. But just kind of remember that you still have lots of things in front of you. And you will get to those when it's time. You said it perfectly earlier. These things, they fall into place when they fall into place. That's it. And it's not the same for everyone. Everyone's going to have these moments now. Around here, when people had passed away, people that my kids loved and, grandparents and things like that, this whole house was just a jungle gym of grief. There was just, there was like 6 or 7 different grievers, all grieving totally different ways, all trying to help each other. And it's just pure chaos because everybody's doing it so different ways.
Yeah.
But all we could do is just sit here for each other. And I would make the rounds. I'd make the rounds to each one and sit with them for a moment and see if I could help them, see what I could do, and they would check on me, and that's all we could do. We weren't doing it. It wasn't perfect or anything, but it was that presence, because that's all you can really do. And these things will come up and come and go, the highs and lows, the peaks and valleys. But just remember that gratitude here in this, what we're talking about today, is think of it as that light that illuminates the grief, and it's never going to erase it. And if you don't force it, if you let it just come naturally, you can okay, you don't need to push grief aside to feel grateful. In fact, gratitude becomes deeper when it grows alongside, right? And you can be grateful for the love you had and for the love you still have. It doesn't erase your love. It doesn't, grief is just trying to, what's the best way to say this, Michael? Grief is trying to let us know that
we loved. It's trying to let us know that the capacity of that love.
What's your final thoughts for everyone today?
When it comes to gratitude and when it comes to grief, both of these are necessary for balance in hard times. To find those golden moments and to process those dark moments. To become whole, we must feel the spectrum of it all. Gratitude is one of the greatest things that can help us survive the darkest periods, especially in moderation. We talk about the RAS, the reticular activating system, where we train our mind to look for things. And it was something that really helped me as I was getting to the healing end of my grief. Being able to start looking for those little, I loved how the Selena girls called it, glimmers. Those golden moments that appear in life. Because the more you look for them, the more you're going to find them. And the more you find them, the more abundant your life becomes. So just remember, both sides of these, the dark and the light, are necessary for integration and wholeness.
And they are both forms of love, the same love. One honors what was, the other honors what still is. It's really simple as that. You don't have to choose between the two of them. In fact, you'll probably find more suffering if you try.
Yeah, guaranteed.
Just remember, your heart is capable of deep love, and this is what it is. So, all right. I have an exercise for today, and Michael says it's not too long. I put this exercise together, and I thought maybe it was too much, but he said, nah. What'd you say? He said, nah.
It's the length it needs to be.
It's the length that it needs to be. Now, see, he's turning my teachings back onto me. You see what happens? Right place, right time. Perfect length, perfect. Yeah, I see what you did there. We're going to call this the two chair exercise. And we're going to try to simulate giving space to both of these truths that we're talking about today that can occupy the same heart. And this is to help us honor grief without being consumed by it, and at the same time deepen our gratitude without forcing it, without it being imposed upon us. So I want you to set up two chairs facing each other. One chair represents grief and the other chair represents gratitude. And I want you to sit in the grief chair first. And I want you, as always, to speak honestly, lovingly, without judgment, about what you've lost, about what and where it hurts. I want you to express what you wish had been different. Just let it out. Take as long as you need to. And this is going to be painful. I'm sorry, but it has to be. And you can say things like, I miss so and so, or I wish I would have, or it hurts that you, right? Things like that. When you feel complete, I want you to take a minute, take 3 good, big, deep breaths, let it out. And I want you to move to the gratitude chair when you're ready. And I want you to sit in the gratitude chair and try to let gratitude come naturally, even if it's tiny. And then I want you to speak things that you're grateful about. I'm grateful for what remains. I'm grateful that I loved you deep enough to grieve. I'm grateful for the moments that shaped me, we were saying earlier. I'm grateful for the strength I'm finding, that I'm rediscovering during this healing process, this healing journey. When you're ready, I want you to push the chairs apart a little bit so that you can stand in between both chairs. And you guys know how I love to do the whole hand over the heart thing. I can't help it. I love it. Just feels good, right? Doesn't it, Michael? Feel good? Put your
I
hand
do it
on
all
your
the
heart.
time.
I do too. I do too. Right? Put your hand. I like to do 2 though. I don't know. Maybe I'm trying to keep it in there. But put one hand on your heart and one hand on your belly. Okay? The places where we feel the most, right? And I want you to say, or think, or whisper, whatever works for you. Both of these belong. Both of these are sacred. Both of these are part of my healing. And that's just kind of a little way to affirm that these 2 things are true. And you can do this as many times as you want. You can do this with someone that you really, really, really deeply trust to sit with you in, right? There's no judgment. There's no advice. There's just sitting with these things. And this is a way for you to kind of let this stuff out. I don't know when this is best for you during your grief. All I'll say is that when it's time, you'll know. When you're ready, right? When you're ready. Any tips and tricks with the exercise you want to leave with them?
Yeah, actually, with this exercise, this is a really effective way to really bring these emotions to the surface. And again, when it comes to grief, it is the surplus of emotions we need to sort of purge out of our body at the pace it needs to. But spend the time you need to with each of these. If you need more gratitude, spend more time with gratitude. If you need to get some more of that grief out, spend the time you need to with the grief. Don't overwhelm yourself, but this isn't about balance, it's about what you need.
Yes. And it's about you being honest about what you need so that you can take good care of yourself. Our affirmations for today. I allow my heart to feel without shame and to heal without rushing. My grief is a reflection of my capacity to love. My gratitude reflects my capacity to grow. I can honor what I've lost and still embrace what remains. I am strong enough to hold both sorrow and thanksgiving within the same breath. Every day I soften, open, and let the light guide me into wholeness. And our journaling prompts for today. What am I grieving right now that I haven't fully named? What memories, relationships, or versions of myself feel tender during the holidays? Where does gratitude naturally appear in my life, even in small, quiet ways? How can I give my grief permission to exist without letting it define me? That's going to be a tough one. Just be careful with yourself. Be gentle. If grief represents where I've been and gratitude represents where I'm going, what lies between them for me right now? And I'll give you a hint. That answer is presence. That's part of the answer. You have the rest of the answer. That's just part of it. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it. Make sure you check out the TikToks and the YouTubes and the Facebooks and the Spotifys and the Apple Podcasts. Anywhere you get podcasts, you find us. And our website. Michael works very hard on that, don't you?
Oh, yeah. All the work.
We love you guys. With love and gratitude. Ad lucem.
Ad lucem.